Alright, boys and girls, welcome back to Valiant Watch. It's your boy Nick and Ken B. We're about to kick it off with some news. We got some great stuff for you, and let's get right into it.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, this is episode 5 of Valiant Watch. Happened so quick, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the biggest
Yeah.
news, the big shocker is the Bloodshot movie got moved. It was supposed to be due on February 21st in 2020, and it's now going to be coming out on March 13th, 2020. So almost a full month, and not really sure why, because there's been nothing but good news about it. Everything's ready to go. So interesting. Maybe they're just, being more strategic about the release date.
Yeah, I think that's what the situation is there, because there hasn't been any leaks about having to do reshoots or preemptive damage control, like say New Mutants or anything like that. So yeah, it's probably just something to do with the marketing. I would put say safe money is on.
Definitely. And also just got news that Valiant partnered up with Blowfish Studios to join and go back into video games. It looks like we're going to be getting like a bunch of video games based on Valiant superheroes. They haven't released a lot of info about what they're going to be doing, but it's definitely going to be exciting. Some of the quote from Dan Mitz, who is the founder and CEO of Valiant's parent company, DMG, who recently purchased them. We're thrilled to bring Valiant's characters back into the video game industry and give fans the opportunity to play as their favorite superheroes. Translating these characters and stories to video games could not come at a more exciting time as we introduce the world to the Valiant universe on the big screen with the Bloodshot release. These games are poised to become further proof of these characters' immense potential as anchors in pop culture. And Michael Bolden from Blowfish commented saying, getting the chance to work with Valiant's universe will certainly bring forth some refreshing new experiences for fans and gamers alike to explore. I've always been a fan of characters like Ninjak, Bloodshot, and Exo Manowar. Valiant's universe presents a wealth of unique characters and rich stories that we look forward to introducing to fans as an interactive experience worldwide. That last line there, I've always been a fan of characters like Ninjak, Bloodshot, and Exo. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, you're hitting all the right notes for a video game for me right now. Like,
Yeah.
those on the console, a Ninjak game is just too perfect. It would translate way too good.
Yeah, that's like a no-brainer, to be completely honest. And then even like EXO, like dude, even Marvel hasn't managed to knock out like a legitimate Iron Man game. So if they can like really just a good EXO game, it's like they're off to a great start, dude. And that's I don't know, I'm excited.
Definitely, it's part of this Valiant 2020 launch that I think they've got going on, where they're hitting a lot of different aspects and getting these characters pushed out to a larger audience. And I didn't see this coming at all, but it's so exciting, really. But,
yeah, I thought we for sure have to get like another movie or two out before that was the next step. But if they're that, I think at this point, Valiant's timed their moves well enough to where if they're that confident to launch into video games, and I mean that's not a cheap undertaking, so if they're ready for it, then they got something good in the wings.
Definitely, and I think if I read correctly, I was doing some research on the Comic-Con numbers. It looks like over the last year, Valiant's comic sales have gone up like 10%. I could be wrong, but it looks like that shift towards a more popular, like they said, anchor in pop culture. Maybe even it's just Western pop culture for right now before it expands. It looks like it's starting to catch hold, and people are starting to look towards Valiant, and it's pretty exciting. This is just another way for them to capitalize on it.
For sure, and it's like you said, it's exciting just because Valiant's one of those things where if you can get somebody to read a Valiant comic, then they'll just continue to read Valiant comics. Yeah. Like you just got to get that one, and the stories are there. So it's a pretty exciting time, especially if you're new to Valiant. There's so much from the last just 7 years alone to catch up on, and then 2020 is looking like a great year. Things are looking good.
Yeah, so to start things off in 2020, the solicitations drop. We've got, excuse me, Quantum and Woody #1. This is, I know everybody's super excited for that team up. I know everybody's ready to see them come back. We've got Visitor #2 coming out. We're gonna talk more about that coming up soon, though. um, uh, Ride #3, which is super exciting. Dan Abnett's doing really great stuff with that one.
So much good stuff.
Roku is coming to an end with its fourth issue from Colin Bunn. Sad to see that one go. Hoping that it's just a prelude to the Ninjak series coming sometime in 2020, though. Oof.
Yeah.
Bloodshot #5 is gonna drop. We've got Psylords #8, and looks like we're gonna get the KI6 Killers trade paperback. And interesting that they've got it listed as KI6 Killers. The cat's out of the bag on that one, I guess. Like they're really pushing it.
Well, I think the cool thing about it is that a lot of people pick it up and not realize how awesome that name actually is, aside from, just the name Killers being cool. But when they actually see what the KI6 actually means, they're going to be like, oh. I mean, we were there. You remember.
Yeah,
Ready to flip a table or something, you know what I mean?
And also, there's a Harbinger Wars 2 Deluxe Edition hardcover coming out that I'm pretty excited for. I know they've been pushing a little bit more of the hardcovers lately, and this one looks pretty exciting. So that's what we're looking forward to going into the new year. I know there's a lot of stuff coming. They've been promoting the Valiant 2020 launch pretty heavily because of the hype surrounding the Bloodshot movie. So you've got Ninjak, Shadow Man, Exo Man of War, tons of these characters coming back that people are just, really ready for. And
For sure.
Visitor is a part of that. So I think it's definitely worth discussing the first issue that just came out.
Yeah, and I was pretty excited about it just because I'm a fan of Paul Levitt's. He's one of those dudes where he's not necessarily like the most flashy character, in the comics biz, but that he's a dependable name. Like I can't really think of too many times where I've seen Paul Levitt's name either on a comic or in the news, and I'm just like what the crap, dude? Like it's usually something good.
Yeah.
And so the first issue of The Visitor, it was definitely not what I was expecting. I liked that they kept the mystery element of it in comparison to like the original, because with the original one they had the Visitor versus Valiant, and then they had 13 issues of his solo series, and then you never knew who he was the entire time until the last issue, which is some like crazy time travel, whatever. I'm not going to spoil that. If you haven't read the original Visitor, check it out. You don't need to in order to read the new one, but it was pretty cool, so you should check it out. But anyways, with this one, we don't really get a lot of the Visitor in the issue per se, but we get just enough to make you intrigued in like what his beef is, like this company that he's basically terrorizing. They're clearly up to no good, so it's like what exactly is this beef? It's almost like Viva Vendetta in a way, if that makes sense. I don't know. I thought it was pretty interesting. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely Paul Levitz is just always exciting to see, him attached to it. I think it's part of what Valiant's doing. Also, Tim Seeley coming back, and then Hopeless on Exo Man of War. They've got some big names attached to their books, and they're really making a push for it. So The Visitor was exciting. But they just, I don't know much about it. I haven't read the original one. The description for issue 1, it says, unstoppable, untraceable, unkillable. This is how he changes the world. Who is the Visitor? Why are the leaders of the world terrified of him? And will they live long enough to find out? Those questions are not quite answered in the first issue.
Yeah.
So,
it's definitely a head scratcher.
Yeah, I was definitely hoping to get into this and be like, okay, I've got issue 1. what is going on with the Visitor? Who is it? And it's this, I guess, it's really action-packed, like spectacle-filled book with a lot of explosions and international intrigue and things happening that you're really not in on. You're just like taking them as they come. And I think that's where the series is definitely going to find its groove, because we don't even really see the Visitor's face in this issue, if I'm not mistaken. We pretty much only get like hooded shots or, views of them from behind them. I mean, who knows who it is? I was like, is the issue over already? Is this like, I wasn't sure what was going on. It's hard to even have an opinion on what we got, because it wasn't a lot. It was exciting. It was a lot of like action and intense stuff, but not a lot of information.
Yeah, I think what'll hopefully Paul Levitz will lean into, and that'll give it its unique identity, is that it's kind of like watching a movie, because well, yeah, let's go with that. So it's kind of like watching a movie in the aspect where, you vaguely know what to expect going in from seeing like the solicits and whatever, but it doesn't. I mean, you pretty much get no answers as far as who the Visitor is. You somewhat see what he's about to an extent. Like, he's clearly intelligent, he's clearly very capable. Some the way he traps them all on the island with the various explosions and whatnot. It's like, it's like I said, it's like very V for Vendetta or Batman-esque. But even that, I mean, you barely get any glimpses to know, for one, that it was even really him that was doing it, as opposed to maybe he was just aware that it was going to happen, or even that he is a him. Could be a girl, could be, I don't know, a robot. You don't really get that too much anything. So I think leaning on that mystery heavy is going to help it, for one, stay in line with the original Visitor, and everybody likes that when New Valiant has throwbacks to the old Valiant, but also be the thing that really makes it stand out from other books that are out on the market right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to pick up on a little bit of what you talked about with the previous series, and that it leaned into Harbinger. Could that be any indication of what we've got coming in Valiant 2020? I know they dropped that image just teasing that Harbinger's coming back. Is there any way that this could be a prelude or an entryway into their arrival back into the Valiant universe or back into the fold?
Well, that actually, it could be, just because, well, all right, spoiler alert. With the original one, the original Visitor, after 15 something issues of appearances, they finally revealed that it was actually an older version of Peter Stanchek that was in disguise, time travel shenanigans and whatnot. So if they were to use a similar plot device for this version, I mean, the options are pretty wild. There's plenty after Harbinger Wars 2 and some of the stuff we saw in Livewire. There's plenty of psyops out there who would definitely like to stick it to some mega corporations, the UN, and so on and so forth. It could be, maybe one of the characters from like Ninjak or something, because that's definitely something that he could do, or anybody in that realm. I mean, maybe Neville Alcott will just trip out and he'll be the Visitor. Well, but I mean, it would be pretty wild. And then even then, they could use Peter again, because, like you said, they're just now starting to build up to bring the Harbinger characters back into the fold, and we haven't really seen. Even with Peter, he was barely in Harbinger Wars 2. That was a very heavily leaned on Livewire and EXO and Ninjak, and surprisingly, he wasn't in it very much. So maybe this could be connected to how they bring him back into the fold. So that's pretty interesting to ponder and see how that turns out.
Yeah, there's not really much else to do with this except kind of guess where it's going and sit back and watch and find out, and hope we get more information in the next issues. I think it's a 6-issue run, so they've got time to play with it and toy with the reveal, I guess.
Yeah, and then following up that, speaking of Harbinger related stuff, Life and Death of Toyo Harada was just
So
recently
good.
collected into trades, and it's great. Toyo he's that dude that you love to hate. Like I think that my favorite way to describe him is basically like Magneto with Tony Stark money, but also Professor Xavier's powers. You know.
Yeah, yeah,
But
that makes
what did you
sense.
think of it?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess first the Life and Death of Toyo Harada from Joshua Dysart, Cafu, Andrew Dahlhaus, and Dave Sharp. And Dave Sharp, I gotta give a shout out to him. One of my favorite letterers in the industry right now. Always
For
excited to see
sure.
him on anything. Kills the Harley Quinn stuff. And it's like seeing what they did, what he can do with Valiant. I was like, no way. So it's just cool to see that. But yeah, Life and Death. You had a good explanation there because you see different influences. It feels like of this character, but it's something totally unique. And I think the mystery behind Toyo Harada has been some of the intrigue. So you read, like I think the origin happened in Harbinger Wars, the first one, where you kind of see
Yeah.
a little bit about the motives and what's driving them. But this really dives into it. You find you kind of go in and out of his life at different stages throughout the book, and I thought that was really interesting how they were able to tell all these different points because we followed the character for years now.
Mhm.
And this is supposed to be somewhat of a conclusion of what the creative team described as the Psyot cycle, which started back with Harbinger Wars and has just taken this character all the way through to Life and Death of Toyo Harada. So following through this, it felt like the closing of a book. And I've jumped in and out of this series or this character now as I've been catching up on everything. So it was a little it was new reader friendly to the degree that you can pick up the book and follow it, but you're gonna miss
Mhm.
a few of the notes. The standout characters for me are not really Toyo Harada or the villains that's going on. It's this team that works with him
Yeah.
and Sunlight on Snow, or I believe
The
the name was
best.
Mick Major, who everybody that's who they referred to him as before. They accepted the name that he chose for or they chose for themselves.
Hmm.
Um, it was like that was what made me want to keep reading it. And then like I've got the trade. I couldn't resist picking it up. I've got some of the single issues, and that's just how it goes. But
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
they got my money again. But I, I got to the end, and then they talk about the Psyot cycle where Imperium is in that you get to see a lot more of these characters, and it's not just Toyo Harada. So in classic Valiant fashion, they've pulled me in with this pretty long 6-issue story, and there's tons more to read. So
Yeah.
it's back to the bookstore, the little comic store to figure out, what I'm missing.
The cool thing about like this story in particular and just the character of Toyo Harada is that he's very much like an onion. Like there's so many layers to him. Because on the surface, he's super easy to dislike. Like he's super arrogant, pretty callous. I mean, he pretty much never really shares a genuine shred of emotion for any of the people that are like on his side. You know what I mean? Like you get the sense that they're all like they believe in the vision, but they all kind of realize that they're working for like a complete knob, but they just go with it because the ends justify the means. It's very Machiavellian, but like even with that being said, like when you see him in something like in Harbinger Wars, where they dabbled into his backstory just a tiny little bit, it's just a little bit, just enough to where you're like, okay, so he's not just a mustache twirling knob, like he's actually pretty interesting character. And then when you go through Life and Death, like just like the hippie years, when he completely forgot about everything, and he was just all about enlightenment and all that kind of stuff, like you're like, okay, there's legitimately a lot to this guy. And then even when you go back even earlier than that, when he was just like a little kid after the bomb got dropped in Hiroshima, and he's like, taking military supplies and mind controlling the military and just like making them just do humanitarian things. Like, yeah, his methods are not the nicest, but he's still like just a kid at the time, and he was like legitimately getting stuff done. So when you go through something like life and death, it's by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, I mean, yeah, he's a jerk, but pretty justifiable for the most part.
Yeah.
So, well, there's some stuff that's still like, nah, he's just a jerk. But for the most part, you kind of you understand where he's coming from, and it's like they make the level that you like the character as deep as how aggravated you can be with just his general way of doing things, and that's just an amazing character, one that's completely three-dimensional, like actual human beings are, and it's just good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think they really flesh out the character, and they set him in this wild story. Like, we're following this story about it's essentially betrayal, and it's a chess match between Toyo Harada and really Angela, who turns up, or the host of Angela, who is trying to outmaneuver Toyo Harada and take control and essentially kill him. So, it's like everybody's taking these cautious steps to get one up on each other, and it boils down to the center point brain, which I probably it wasn't. I don't know if it was supposed to be a funny moment, but at one point we find out that this really deeply mysterious and antagonized and traumatic brain in this glass container that is just under constant suffering. His name is Carlos, and I thought that was just like so strikingly just like contrasting of what this entire issue set up. So then you've got Toyo Harada referring to this brain as Carlos for this issue, and but, like, around the center point brain is the destruction of Toyo Harada, and that's what Angela wants to use to essentially explode and send out enough energy to cancel out even Toyo Harada. I believe she's got some type of dampener that he had tried to account for, and that's where like the big switcheroo happens, and it's like a who done it, but not really.
Yeah.
So then you spend a few issues without Toyo Harada because the explosion of the center point brain was supposed to have killed him, and I think that's where the story kind of finds its groove then, and it starts to build up to the twist. And I was glad that it didn't rely on that. I was glad that it wasn't 6 long issues to build up to this explosion of the center point brain that kills Toyo Harada, and then there's a sneaky like final page. Yeah, like him twirling his mustache. Like I'm glad they didn't go that route. It was a little bit more complex. It was a little bit more interesting that way, and they pulled it off. So, like, in setting him in this crazy story, they're able to explore his god complex, which I thought was like my favorite part of it. Like, he has a crazy god complex. It's like a 9-year-old. These people were worshiping him as a god on this ship, and like seriously unhealthy behavioral traits are going to develop from that. Like, there's no way that doesn't.
Yeah, and there's one thing I definitely want to hit on too that you mentioned earlier, and then just now with the Toyo being absent, is really getting to see how his impact, both negative and positive, is with the characters around him. In particular, Sunlight on Snow, who's like the greatest robot ever, because there's such a bizarre. I think. Well, all right. I think probably one of the best examples of Toyo Harada is his relationship with Lord Vine 99, because the whole point of his creation was to kill Toyo, but if he kills him, he dies too. So when he finally figures that out, he's just like in this bizarre torment because literally in his DNA is just to murder the crap out of that man, but he can't do it because he has just enough autonomy to care about self-preservation, which shouldn't have been there. It's like this bizarre gift, like backhanded compliment that he gets from Harada, and it's just like it's wild to see the extents who you'll go through to like live up to who he wants to be, but also has this bizarre dependency not just on self-preservation but on Toyo Harada himself, and like that weird counterbalance of like I want to shoot this guy in the face, but I absolutely need him to stay around is something that's like a common theme with all the characters on his team, you know, and you know like Sunlight on Snow, like just the just the parts where they kind of get into his, well, I guess for lack of a better phrase, like his thinking patterns, where he came up with the name from. I mean, just those elements alone is enough to make that book like a solid buy. You know, not just a read, but like that's something you want to go back and take a look at, because very, 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 very rarely is the whole is AI real and what makes a soul and this, that, and the other touched on and done so well. And for this big clunky 1950s esque looking robot to be like this thing that really makes you reflect on the human condition just speaks to how well that series was done. And it's crazy to think that it's literally just 6 issues. They're not like double sized issues or anything. It's just that dense but that well crafted to where they you know, Josh Dysart and the gang were able to fit in so much quality material that by the time you read 6 issues, it feels like you read like 24, you
Yeah.
know, or something, but you didn't. It's just that good. And it's like, it is like, I don't want to say a daunting task, but by the time, like, if you actually sit and read it cover to cover, by the time you're done, you're just like, holy crap, like I need a smoke or something. You know what I'm saying? Like you need to go outside for a minute by the time it's over, but it's like in a good way. You know, it's not like you're trying to slog through like I don't know, like Ultimate 3 or something like that, where you're just like you know, you just need to take a shower and rinse it off. It's just you're like, why is this so good? You know? And
Oh yeah. Like I sat down and read it in one sitting. I couldn't put it down. It was it's that kind of book. It's a page turner and all of that good stuff, you know. It's classic Valiant. I feel like they pull you in with this book that it ties into the universe, but it can also be read on its own, and it's got this great character development, and they do all the great things with it. But I think if I had a favorite moment of the whole series of all 6 issues, it has to be when Toyo Harada went to meet Einstein just before he died, and it really spoke to his whole God complex. I thought that was such an interesting character moment, and the artwork in that just like set the whole series off for me. I thought that like captured so much of the character as he goes and you know Einstein's like trying to die and they're trying to resuscitate him, and it's it's really kind of dramatic and heartbreaking, and Toyo Harada's super selfish about it. And he's just trying to get something out of him, and he's like, you know, I'll help you cross the ferry. And it's all of this really whimsical, trippy, almost Doctor Strange-esque artwork where it's psychedelic is a word that might describe it, but
but yeah, it's hard to wrap it up in a couple words to describe as how wild it is. It's very. I'm glad you said Steve, Doctor Strange, because it is very like Steve Ditko early days esque, like just out there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It was. I thought it was just a great moment, but it was touching in a really strange way that only this character can pull off, because you know they're exploring these human elements with Einstein being separated from life and you know undergoing the process of death and explaining about energy converting into matter and how everything's okay, but it was it wasn't about that. It was about self-preservation for Toyo Harada, as
Yeah.
with most things, you know, like you were talking about with the team. They're only there because he's outmaneuvered them at some point and he's got this leverage on them or this power. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just every interaction with this guy, from a child being worshipped as a god to meeting Albert Einstein, and it's just everything. So I thought that was kind of probably my favorite part of it. The space elevator was cool. The economic implications of what they're doing with it. He really controls global affairs in this. But it was those like really close touching moments that showed how deeply skewed this guy is. Like,
Yeah, and that's the thing is that that's the conflict, like the conflicting natures of Toyo Harada is that it's like you said, like with the whole Einstein dying thing, like it's not about him giving two craps about Einstein ever.
yeah,
And
yeah,
no matter how, like, even though the dialogue between the two of them it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's well done, but at the end of the day, you're like, this dude doesn't give a crap at all about any of this. He's just
no,
looking at, he's just trying to get his in.
yeah,
And that's the crazy thing is because it's almost like, you know, well, not to give politicians too much credit, but it's like everybody else is kind of aware that, when it comes to Toyo, like even though he has all these amazing ideas and all these things that will advance the world, it's like, yeah, but do we really want to get them from that guy? And so, like no, you don't. Like
yeah,
the right answer is no, you don't. Like,
yeah,
but just the way he works is that his the the implications of the changes he wants to make on the world are so huge that you're kind of rooting for him until he does something like just pretending to be dead and leaving his team to the wind for like the majority of the series for them to try to figure out how they could somehow manage to shred, not even put together a semblance of a normal life, but just survive the situation that this incredibly arrogant figure put them in. And, then just was like, I'm out, like just deuced out. And at never no point does anything redeeming,
yeah,
all right, like say for example, with Stronghold, where he's trying to voice his objections like the first half of the series before it really hits the fan.
yeah,
At no point you knew that the Harada was never going to listen to him because he's just that arrogant. But at the same time, it's like, man, if you had maybe just been a nice person for like 2 seconds and like let somebody on your team actually have a voice and behave like a normal human being, some of this stuff could have been avoided. This whole thing with Angela turning traitor could have been avoided, or at the very least, you know, she shouldn't have been trusted with as much freedom as she had in the first place to even get them into this situation. And I don't know, it's just it's such a bizarre dynamic with Toyo and just even like just the characters on his team. Well, except for Sunlight on Snow, there's not really nothing bad you can really say about that dude. And Valiant 99 is dope just because he's a wild monster. But the rest of them is kind of like with the collective of you guys, you have the power to where you could do the same things that you're doing under Toyo without Toyo. So why is there this weird dependency? But as you go through the story, you understand that too, that he is a magnetic person. You know, um, for example, what's Grave Dog, right?
yeah,
Like, not only is he convinced him to completely turn traitor and basically risk not just being branded, an outlaw like Livewire was after Harbinger Wars 2 or something like that. But basically, he's got a technology in his body that's pretty much going to kill him anyway, and something that they could be used to just, at any given time, if Toyo's tech to keep him able to use his powers and this, that, and the other had slipped up, they could have just flipped a switch and fried his brain.
yeah,
But the thrill of the power and being able to fight back against the people that he had this long grudge against and this, that, and the other, like it's just enough to make us, well, I was gonna say a sane person do insane things, but I don't think Grave Dog was really completely there in the first place. But still, the comparison remains. But it's just like it's just a very, 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 very interesting, compelling look at just egotistical people and what draws people to them.
yeah.
Um,
And interestingly enough, like as focused as it is on these people, it were the ones who aren't exactly people who were kind of my favorites. Like Sunlight on Snow just took it for me, but also this Lord Vine 99. We got to talk about him for a second because he went through hell in this book. Uh, like, he gets wrecked by this force field in his cage that was supposed to be, on choice. Like he's like, I'm behind here because it's safe for me or it's better for me, and he's able to take it down. But it ends up kind of being his downfall,
Yeah,
and dude loses like 3 limbs and half a body or something. He's
he gets
like
mangled.
he
Just
does,
straight up.
and he's super brutal. And I love the character. I thought it offset Sunlight on Snow really well, so I just wanted more of them together. So I got to go back and read more. But we end with LV99 somehow finding their way through this complex system of getting up to the space elevator and into orbit, basically in a self-preservation move to dehydrate and put themselves into stasis until they can be reawoken into a much healthier world and hopefully with more of their body. um, so I wanted to ask the ending. We've got him or them in orbit, and Sunlight on Snow goes through that process. I guess I don't want to spoil that too much, although it's probably, if you've come this far, you know what's going on. Sunlight on Snow meets these kids and is like, you want to listen to music, and that's kind of how it ends. The music plays and it extends out above the atmosphere and into orbit, and we see the music notes hit where LV99 is crystallized and orbiting Earth. Is that supposed to awaken them? Was that music the wake up
I
call?
I think so. I think that's like the subtle nod to
Mhm.
for one, we know that spoiler alert again, that Toyo isn't actually dead. So he's gonna be up to some shenanigans, and the odds that he would let Sunlight on Snow and LV99 just float free out there with his
Mhm.
fingerprints all over him. That's he's too he's very now that I think about it, here's a great comparison. It's kind of like Walter White and Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad, where every time Jesse like gets a little bit of free will into his head and he kind of tries to break away from Walter, he does like these crazy things to manipulate him back under his thumb, even though he just treats him like complete garbage 24/7 because he has that bizarre like mentorship. I care, but I can't just say I do because I'm too nuts. It's almost like that. So you know that if LV99 is still out there, he's Toyo probably put like some weird code into the music so that it'll kickstart his regeneration or some nonsense like that. And then when he's ready to make his next move, Sunlight will Snow. I'm sure he has like some backdoor in his programming too, because why wouldn't he? It's Toyo. And it's just a little, I like the little elements like that towards the end, I think are great because it's like you said, they almost did it like in reverse where they show him dying, and even if he had just, that would have been the end of it and they would have had to like ride out the rest of the series without Toyo, would have still been pretty great.
Yeah.
But they didn't they didn't use that as, say like well, just typically speaking, the death of a character in comic books, that's the crux of the story. That's the meat and potatoes.
Mhm.
So seeing um seeing them do it the other way around just shows that somewhere down the line, if this was the stuff that he was up to when he had all eyes on him, there's probably going to be like the next stage of Toyo is going to be pretty freaking wild if he's making moves when nobody can see him. So when it's time for like Toyo, Sunlight and Snow, LV99, whatever Psyots are left for him
Yeah.
to swoop under his thumb to bust out his next plan, it's gonna have to be something pretty freaking wild from how high Dice Heart set the bar with the ending of this story.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, yeah, circling back, yeah, I definitely think that that's what we're getting there is that LV99 and Sunlight and Snow and was I cannot remember his girlfriend's name. That's gonna drive me insane.
Ingrid?
Yeah, there you go. And with her, actually, that was one thing we haven't even touched on yet. With her being knocked up, you know.
There's still there's a few other things that like there's so much that happened in this, and yeah, how about the whole sex scene? Like I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, that was completely out of left field. That was weird. But it fit. But it's weird. It's weird, but it fit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's another thing too, is when that becomes an issue, that's really probably going to be like the catalyst for when he comes out of the shadows, because there's no way anybody with an ego that big is going to let their progeny just loose out in the world without, turning, I would say, flipping tables to get to him, but in Toyo's case, it'd be more like flipping over cities, trying to topple governments. Maybe next time, instead of creating a small island, he'll take over like Australia or something. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really explore the name of the series, the life and death of Toyo Harada, not as a linear concept of, you've read about his life. This is how he dies. This is, this is not Wolverine being encased in adamantium and now he's gone. They take the concept of life and death and explore it in a way that's a bit more dynamic. So, yeah, you get this generational aspect of it now. And it gets with Ingrid, and now there's baby Toyo Harada in the mix. And that means crazy things for the Valiant universe, especially coming into Valiant 2020. Like the implications of that baby,
Yeah. And then on top of which, Toyo being Toyo, think about all the other things that have gone on. The Psylords sooner or later are going to come back to Earth. Exo-Man of War being back on Earth again. The whole thing with KI6, like there's no way that lunatic is not gonna have some kind of headbutting with that organization. I mean, there's just it's just it's like I feel like we've kind of ended on the same note, but the last couple episodes, but it's just insanely good world building that wasn't even necessarily the key point of it, but there's so much potential built up from just everything throughout the series, like the way we learn, like for one, Angela's technology being in the hands of just governments, like world governments.
That government guy that she talks to all the time, he was so wild.
Man.
Like that person. I can't remember his name right now, but
that's gonna drive me nuts.
It kept catching me off guard because it's such like serious. Action-packed moments of this guy's wild personality. Like
he just comes in, he's like Donald Trump Twitter account come to life, with no filter at all. I love that dude. He's like one of the most honest characters in comics, because that's really the kind of dirtbag that you would need to run a government organization like that, without any of the bureaucracy or the pretending like you care about kissing babies and all that nonsense. Like, he's such a douche, but he's such a great character.
It's true. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's amazing.
There are a lot of moments that just build on potential. The baby is one of them. All these side characters, opening up their path forward with autonomy. And I think another one that we haven't discussed is Toyo Harada getting lost in the fold after the explosion of the center point brain and becoming this interdimensional being now who has to survive on micro sleeps and eating dirt, basically. And it was like a crazy moment. He had to reduce body functions down to like 20% by meditating. He's in there for a minute. So is he scheming? Is he just trying to survive? We don't really find out that much because he gets attacked by this horrendous monster that's basically is it a reality that extends out beyond into like other universes, because what it takes, was it a mind squall in order to get out of it? Yeah. And it that's what like throws on, but he comes out aged, and he's like horribly aged. So was he in there that long?
Well, part of that is that Toyo uses his powers to make himself look younger than he really is.
Yeah.
But even with that, he's still like super old by even comparison to his normal self. I think that might even play a little bit into um, some of the like divinity aspects of the Marvel universe, where you're just in universes that are beyond like rational thought and comprehension. You know, I mean that's a whole other can of worms. I don't know if I really want to open that one up, but
Yeah.
with like Eternity and stuff, which is if you haven't read that, you should check that out.
Yeah.
All you guys watching, anyway. But yeah, I mean, even with that, that's another thing. Like, I could see them doing just like a whole series about, well, just Toyo and like the realms, somebody of his power being put in just like this Dadaist, weird, tripped out astro plane type universe where there's a lot more than meets the eye, but it's just very like meta and
Ooh. Yeah.
very Ditko-esque. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
could see that being a thing later on too. So
Like
I mean,
maybe sorry, it feels like a bit of a pivot into, what else can we do with this character? Because it has been very Professor X in the past and running Harbinger, and he said some of Tony Stark's money, sorry. And so what do you do with this character now? And a popular choice these days is to go galactic,
yeah,
or and to take them outside into space. So it's interesting that we get this, and maybe Baby Harada is going to push that forefront, and that's going to be their little niche to explore, and maybe that's what it's setting up. But I thought it was a cool influence on this book, and they pulled it off really well, I thought. So ultimately there are all these aspects going on with all these characters. There's so much going on, but it's cohesive and it makes sense, and it's
yeah,
exciting to read, and it leaves you not bummed out that this character just died and that's the end of it. That was the story of the death of Toyo Harada. It's not that. It's something that's a lot more, and that's kind of what I appreciated about it.
for sure. And like you said, it's something that twists the whole concept of life and death of a comic book character in a new direction. It's just portrayed in a much more artful, meaningful way, and then once it's over with, it's like you said, like they've done so much with them just being more of an earth-based, almost standard comic book villain, that now with his consciousness being expanded and all this other crazy stuff that he can do, and realizing that there's more to him than controlling minds and this, that, and the other. Like, yeah, maybe he will be some kind of tripped out cosmic being, and then Toyo Jr. has to come rein him in, or vice versa, or there's so much potential that they can really go any way with it. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to imagine after how well they've been doing with Toyo that no matter how they decide to let that hammer fall, it being something that you're not excited to read through and just go on the next leg of this journey through the Valiant universe. But I mean, all in all, man, it's just everything about that book, the characters in it. Even if you don't like, and one of the great things too is even if you absolutely hate Toyo, you can still read through that and like really find just all kinds of amazing things. Even like you mentioned the interactions with him and Albert Einstein. Even if you hate a Toyo, that's still amazing. You know, um, Sunlight on Snow. Don't care what anybody says. He's like one of the greatest characters in Valiant, and he's just a big goofy robot. You know what I mean?
Give me
The
that spinoff.
bizarreness. Yes, exactly. Valiant. If you're when you see this, Sunlight on
Oh,
Snow #1, we need it. The fans
oh,
need it. Everybody needs it.
please,
You know what
please.
I'm saying? Um, Even just like all right, the bizarre nature of Angela and the being she's infected with, that's enough that to make you want to like, okay, I want to read some more about what's going on here exactly. Who is this extra dimensional being who goes around making weapons of mass destruction out of brains? Like there's
Yeah,
just so much crazy stuff going on that it's just I can't push how amazing that book is enough.
yeah,
I mean, it's just Just it's definitely a masterpiece. It's one that I think will definitely be something that Valiant minis and events in the future will definitely be compared to, like this. You must be this tall to ride kind of situation, because it's legitimately that solid.
Definitely, yeah. Couldn't agree more. Like it's definitely one to check out. But that's pretty much everything I got on it. I did want to ask, as we come to the end of this year, Valiant's pushed a lot of news, a lot of new releases coming out. Valiant 2020. Is there one that you're particularly excited for? Like anything that you're like, that's the one you really want?
Oh man, it's hard to choose.
I
It's
put you on the
like,
spot, huh?
well, yeah, because there's so much, like, because I don't want to just say the cheap answer and just be like Valiant in general, because like they're literally batting 1,000, but it's the truth. But there's also, like, for example, the Doctor Tomorrow book that's coming out. It's supposed to be like very golden agey with like a JSA type feel to it. So that I'm pretty excited about. What happens next after Roku ends, I'm pretty pumped about. Dennis Hopeless on Exo Manowar. I think that's, if I had to pick one, that'd be the one. Is Dennis Hopeless on Exo Manowar, just because that's going to be like his first real thing with Valiant, and then taking a character like Exo Manowar who's simple on the surface, but if you really read through like some of the work like Venditti's done on him, or Matt Kent, or whoever the case may be, like you have to take him as more than just this like tough dude who's like all about ripping bears in half in a robot suit. You know what I'm saying? Like there's legitimate layers to a 6th century barbarian in future tech that you have to take into account to make it something that's really worth reading past just cool violent action scenes. Although those are awesome too. So if I had to pick one, I think that's the one that I'm looking most forward to right at this moment. But I reserve the right to change my answer.
Right.
How about you? You got any closing thoughts for us?
It's hard not to say Bloodshot with Vin Diesel. Like them making their way into theaters is huge. The treatment of intellectual property these days as a comic book publisher, this is huge for Valiant. And however closely tied they are to the film, it kind of doesn't matter. They're gonna get a bump from this, and now they've got video games and all of these series coming out. So it is hard not to just say Valiant. But if I had to pick, it's still Ninjak. That teaser image of a bloody Ninjak sword, it's my phone background since it released, and I'm just like chomping at the bits for this Ninjak story. So just give it to me.
Right on, brother. I'm with you on that one, dude. Oh man. So on that note, we're gonna wrap it up, guys. We'll catch you next time, boys and girls. Peace.